Well, what a rich story. A favorite story for many of us. In Bibles that put headings before the little stories, they usually call this one, Jesus calls the disciples, or Jesus chooses his disciples. But really, this is one of the abundance miracles, like feeding the 5,000, or turning water into wine, or manna in the wilderness. This story is one that literally gives us a boatload of miracles. The miracle isn't only the bursting nets full of fish for men who had caught nothing all night long. This is a miracle-drenched story. It was a miracle that the fishermen put back out at all. I mean, think of the excuses or the valid reasons, really, that they might have had. I mean, we're tired. We've already been out all night. We know these waters. We've cleaned our nets already. So the response itself is a miracle. No deep water, no nets out, no big catch. And of course, the big catch is the big miracle. Imagine it, so huge a catch that it was breaking the nets and sinking the boats. I can sort of imagine them laughing and cheering at first as they're catching these fish, and then finally yelling for help as they're becoming overwhelmed. No one watching that morning or hearing the story later could deny that this was a miracle only God himself could do. Simon and the others certainly saw it that way. Even knowing that, I think it was another miracle of abundance when they left everything and walked away to follow Jesus. I can't help wondering how the story would have ended if Simon had given those excuses and refused to go out. That's the miracle. The hero of this story isn't Simon Peter and his fellow fishermen. There was no chance that they wouldn't go back out that day, because this is a story about God, our God, a God of miracles, a God who creates us to be the people that he needs us to be, a God who created in Simon the spirit to obey, a God who creates in each one of us the yearning and the ability to obey. We are all part of God's miracles, and because he still chooses to work through us, our response is crucial as well. How many miracles have we missed by not listening or not following Jesus? He wants to use us here and now for his miracles. He calls us to put out into deep water. So what would it mean for you to put out into deep water, to let down your net for a catch, to go fishing for men? Now, is there anybody here who's like me, that you kind of resent this new language that from now on you will be catching people? I mean, we learned it. From now on you will be fishers of men. We sang it. We memorized it that way. Am I alone in this? No, I see I'm not. Okay. But you know what? We missed something important when we used that fishers of men language, aside from not being inclusive. The Greek verb that's used in this sentence for fishing doesn't mean the kind of fishing that you throw out your line, catch a fish, bring it in, kill it, eat it. No, this verb means more like catch and release. A fish on a line, an animal in a trap, faces certain death, and then is released to swim again or to run free. That's a whole different concept. We have been caught and released. When Jesus catches people, we are released. Released from the power of sin, released from trying to save ourselves, released from trying to be good enough that God will love us. Released, set free, given new life. Caught and released by this Jesus, by his love, by his life, his death, his resurrection. But we are released to share that good news. Jesus calls all who know him and love him to be part of his catch and release program too. Now let me repeat that. All who know him and love him. So did Jesus know those fishermen before he asked them for the boat? Before he asked them to go back out into deep waters? Before he asked them to leave everything and follow him? We don't know for sure, but back in Luke 4, verse 38, it certainly sounds like Jesus knew Simon and was already going to his house when he learned that his mother-in-law was ill. When I was doing some research, I was looking for images of boats and nets and fishes. Somehow I came upon the story of the Jesus boat. The Jesus boat was actually found in 1986 when this lake was very low and the boat was submerged and partially preserved in almost the very location that this story took place. It is now in a museum in Israel, but a link from that Jesus boat story took me to another story. Now, this is one that I cannot vouch for its veracity. In fact, probably more the opposite. But it was a thought-provoking story for me. The story goes that in AD 21, Jesus went to visit his father's friend, Zebedee, a boat builder whose sons were fishermen. Let me read you just a little bit. Jesus of Nazareth was an expert in both designing and building. He was a master at working with wood, and Zebedee had long known of the skill of the Nazareth craftsman. For a long time, Zebedee had contemplated making improved boats. He now laid his plans before Jesus and invited the visiting carpenter to join him in the enterprise, and Jesus readily consented. Jesus worked with Zebedee only a little more than a year, but during that time, he created a new style of boat and established entirely new methods of boat making. By superior techniques and greatly improved methods of steaming the boards, Jesus and Zebedee began to build boats of a very superior type, craft which were far more safe for sailing the lake than the older types. For several years, Zebedee had more work turning out these new style boats than his small establishment could handle. In less than 5 years, practically all the craft on the lake were built in the shop of Zebedee at Capernaum. Jesus became well known to the Galilean fisherfolk as the designer of the new boats. Truth? Fiction? We don't know. But when they found the boat in 1986, the shape of the frame and the planks were unlike anything previously recorded in seafaring craft. The planks were assembled using mortise and tenon joint, locked in place by the shaped pegs, and the nails were ones that would be more suited for domestic carpentry than boat building. And then, of course, now we have carbon analysis and reviewing construction techniques and ceramic chronology, all of which dated the Jesus boat to within 1 century BC to 1 century AD. Now, the boat is real. The story about Jesus the boat builder, not that I can vouch for it. But would it change the story for you if Jesus knew Simon and James and John? Would it make it any less of a miracle that they left everything and followed Jesus? Or would it come as a reminder that our God is a God of relationships? Would it be surprising to think that Jesus might spend a year nurturing relationships with at least some of the men that he was going to invite to leave everything and follow him? And if so, what would the lesson be for you and me? For those of us who are called to leave everything and follow Jesus too. I think it says that we need relationships before we can expect people to listen to anything we might say or do to help them to know Jesus, to help them to know that he lived and died for them, to help them be released by this Jesus too.